Hello, 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 my fellow randoms. My randoms in all sorts of creative endeavors. My name is Kev Duffy, and welcome to this, our 18th episode of What's Your Random Podcast, where I discover and celebrate independent and individual creativity from the inception of an idea to the process and the practicalities of bringing that idea to life in a creative medium. I am finally remembering that whole little shtick and the introduction and the explanation of what we do here at What's Your Random, and it's feeling more and more familiar to me and more natural and more like it's really describing the heart and soul of what I'm trying to achieve here. And I hope that you feel the same way. If you do, I do hope that you're subscribed. You're helping us grow slowly but surely, like the little engine that could. And nothing goes further in helping us grow than you subscribing, and also, if you can, sharing your favorite episode if you have one on whatever social media you use most to connect with your friends. And hopefully, we connect with somebody who may benefit from hearing from our guests. That is what this show is all about. And I appreciate any and all efforts to help spread the word. So thanks in advance. After the episode, as always, I'll hang on a little bit for some key takeaways, a little bit of a post-show wrap-up, as well as some areas where I think I could improve creatively in creating this podcast. One of the areas I can improve the podcast is by talking more clearly. And I talk about areas where I think I could improve the podcast and or my performance moving forward. So hang on after my guest leaves for that post-show wrap-up. Without further ado, joining me today on What's Your Random Podcast is Jose Esteban Cardenas, whose comic book Universe Protectors can be found on Comixology and in print, and it is a comic to behold and beloved. I really enjoyed reading all 5 issues that are out, and I'm excited for the remaining issues that are on their way, as well as side stories, and we talked about all of that, including Jose's he's a creative powerhouse. He writes, illustrates, publishes, promotes. He does everything and anything that goes into the making of Universe Protectors on his own, and his turnaround time is about 4 months for one issue, which I find to be astounding, frankly, considering that the issues are in full color. He's a workhorse, and he's putting out really great comics. So check out the comics. And one more little teaser, because it was an immensely interesting part of the conversation. And if you're really into it, I hope you check it out on YouTube, because Jose has had the idea for Universe Protectors and has been working on this comic book since he was in grade school, like 4th, 5th grade. Not only was he working on it since then, he still has his drawings and notes from back in the day and uses them as reference now that he has finally published Universe Protectors. So leading into this episode, I just want to say one more time to Jose and let it echo out to anybody listening right here and right now that just keep pursuing your dreams, your creative endeavors, whatever makes you tick, whatever itch you have that sometimes you're afraid to scratch. Just go out there and pursue your passion project and put it out there into the universe, like Jose did with Universe Protectors, because we are all better for it. We're all better because of it. And I'm really grateful to have been able to connect with Jose and also to have learned about his project Universe Protectors, because not only does it represent him and his vision, I think it's something that a lot of people could relate to in a meaningful way. So, without further ado, again, I say and introduce my guest, Jose Esteban Cardenas. Enjoy the random. Be totally different than they have been in the past, but I'm ready for at least some downtime and hopefully disconnect a little bit and relax, maybe watch some more movies, read some more comics, and allow my brain to escape the existence that we all now live in with the
Yeah,
pandemic.
that's one of the key words I've come to learn in the past few months. Disconnect. That's
Yeah,
one thing I've actually had to make myself do a lot more often, just because there's just all the social media just it's just throwing you so much stuff, and most of it is bad. And
right,
and at the same time, I sometimes think it's just, most of the stuff is already stuff that we know. So if you disconnect for a little bit, like a weekend, 2 3 days, you're not missing much, and you're doing yourself a favor. You feel it after those 2 3 days of not looking into your social media, that you feel a little bit better. But yeah, I st- I have to do it more often than not nowadays. But I'm
yeah.
sure that's the case for a lot of for everyone pretty much, because it's a it's been a year. Yeah.
And
Jesus.
I think that like the technology and everything that we're using, social media is all, I don't even want to say relatively new, it's just new.
Yeah.
And I think that our brains and our civilization, as a people, as a human species, we're still getting used to the best practices of using this technology. And
Yeah.
so we've developed it. Me and you, I'm sure, speaking from a pretty similar place, I've grown up with it and it's grown up with me.
Yeah.
And so slowly they roll out new technology, better features, and slowly I adopt them into my life. But
Yeah.
there's coming a point now where you realize, like you said, you just need to have the discipline to shut it off at some point because it's not new information, but it's making you excited in maybe less than positive ways.
Yes. Yeah,
um,
definitely.
and, and so it's like anything else, it takes discipline, like alcohol or whatever it may be. I think
Yeah.
social media and technology is proving to be something pretty similar.
Yeah, and social media I guess it's one of those at the moment it feels like it's one of those necessary evils for the stuff that we do. That we need to do it, but again, in these moments in the world, it's backfiring us at us. So it's just, that's when we kind of need to like step back and be like, okay, let's take a break. But at the same time, taking a break in my case, when I use social media to advertise my art or whatever, like that kind of backfires. So
Right.
it's one of those things that you kind of have to think about it. It's like, yes, you take a break from social media because you want to not feel as bad, to feel a little bit better, to not be stressed. But at the same time, nowadays, if you take a day or two off from social media, you start losing followers, you start to lose exposure, stuff like that. So it's one of those things that you kind of have to battle with every day, and just be like, okay, I'll take a day off or two, but when I come back, I need to start rolling the art, start rolling the self advertising. So
Yeah. It's definitely a catch 22.
yeah.
It's good and bad, double-edged sword, so to speak. I wonder if you try to create some discipline and some strategy to use it. Like, in the example you said, maybe you can go to Instagram and make a post, but not look at other people's posts or not respond to comments or something like that. Have you structured yourself in such a way yet, or is that something that you're exploring?
I'm 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 learning as I go. Actually, I posted a 4 panel comic a month, 2 months ago, where it's literally me like coming in behind like the three main social media, like the Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and I come in. I literally like throw some of my artwork and then run away. So that's pretty much what I'm trying to do right now. Like it's tempting to kind of just like scroll down and just see everyone's posts, but at the same time I feel like it's not helping. So yeah, sometimes I just post, or I like, and I just literally like put the phone away and then literally walk away. Like I don't know, I go to that room, or I go with my kid, like try to spend more time with him, because again, I am really aware that social media right now is not a good thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And
yeah.
for me, I use Instagram primarily. And I was lucky for whatever reason 10 years ago or so when I first joined Instagram. I made a decision then, and I don't know why I made the decision, but I made the decision that I was only going to use Instagram to follow art accounts. And
Yes.
I like tattoo artists. I like illustration, things that I'm interested in, to get
Yeah.
inspired by the visuals and the photos and the illustrations. And I didn't follow any individuals. And basically, if anybody's posting more lifestyle stuff, I unfollow them there, because that's not what I use Instagram for. And so for me, I could go to Instagram and scroll pretty quickly, and 99% of the images that come up are just inspiration and people creating stuff. So I am very happy with myself 10 years ago for making that decision, and kind of using Facebook just for connecting with people and maintaining communication with people I have a personal relationship, and
Yeah.
then separating Instagram into something else. But I know a lot of people haven't done that.
I I started with Facebook like many others, and I opened an Instagram account when I started. I figured out that I kind of needed to have one to start posting stuff about my art. But somehow I switched into Twitter. Like I live more on Twitter nowadays. But it's like you said. I also just I follow mostly just like people that do art or stuff like that, just for inspiration. But the the bad people always sip in like their stuff. You know, the, it become it's I found, for me at least, I don't know if it's because of the algorithm or whatever, but I find Facebook to be more toxic than Twitter at the moment, which is something I keep hearing everyone else like, oh no, Twitter is where the toxicity is. But for me, I don't know. Again, I don't know if it's just the people that I follow, or I don't know. It's more toxic. So I've been finding myself just posting more on Twitter than on Instagram for a while. About a year or two ago, like I was mostly on Instagram, but again, I just switched to Twitter. I don't know why. Just I don't know. Yeah, it was. I every now and then I'm like, why am I on Twitter more than I should? I think I should be more on Instagram, but I don't know. Is the algorithm on both has been doing some weird stuff with your followers, and so right now I'm at the moment I'm kind of like taking a little break from all the social media. Like I probably post something really quick on all three, and then I just go away. Just because, yeah, again, because I'm trying to, if I don't do it, I feel like I'm just gonna go insane. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And
weird
that's, I
times.
mean, that feeds into one of the reasons I started this podcast 3 months ago, was because I found that I did not have an outlet for meeting new people, expressing myself in a really like long form discussion dialogue type of setting,
Hmm.
because I'm locked inside all day. I'm not meeting new people, and I'm not connecting with my friends on Zoom all the time. So I thought, why not meet random people? And then I don't have to rely on Twitter and Facebook to try to connect with people and start a conversation. And the nuance when you're speaking through typed communication often gets lost, and miscommunication and stuff like that. So that's one of the reasons I started this podcast. And so far, I've been really inspired by all of my guests, including you already. I think your project is really amazing, and I'm excited to get into it. So since
Awesome.
I haven't introduced you yet, my guest today on What's Your Random Podcast is Jose Esteban Cardenas. And he is the author and illustrator.
I do everything mostly because it's cheaper. That way I don't have
Yeah,
money.
and you
So
do it.
like
You
I
do
write
amazing job.
everything. Yeah, I write everything. I draw it, color it. I letter it. I know at some point I need to get like a letter because I know I'm not that good, but I still try my best. And at the same time, this comics like it's my baby, so I kind at the same time kind of want it to be 100% me. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's another reason why I kind of don't go out looking for colors, even if my coloring sucks. So, this has been uh like a dream come true to actually like have a comic, like a physical comic, and that I can say that I did it all by myself. Yeah.
Yeah, not only do you have a comic, you have a really good comic. And
Oh, thank you. Thank you so
the
much.
comic's name is Universe Protectors.
Universe Protectors, yes.
Yeah, so I don't know if you want to introduce a short synopsis and we could just kind of go into your history as a creator as well as more specifics about Universe Protectors.
Yeah. So Universe Protectors is pretty much the story of these three kids that have some superpowers. At the beginning, they're not really sure how they got them. They use a ring to kind of wear this armor that that puffs out of the ring, and from there them three meeting kind of like triggers like these monsters to kind of like start chasing them, and from there it's just like a whole bunch of magic and technology. I've always described this comic as a like combination of I grew up with anime and manga mostly, so this comic is a combination of Evangelion, Power Rangers, and Dragon Ball. So this is just all mashed together, just all the stuff I grew up with. So and at the moment I have 5 out of 16 issues that and I'm currently working on issue 6. So it's it's a lot of nights, mostly nights, because that's the only time I can actually work on it. So and I do it all digitally because it's a little bit easier to kind of go back in and edit it. So, but it's a fun project. It's a lot of work though.
I could only imagine. I mean, the level of quality, considering that you're doing it somewhat part time at night, if I understand correctly,
Yeah,
and
yeah, because
then
I do have a
also.
full-time job and a kid and a house. So, there's also other things some other side projects that I'm doing with my friends, some other like comics. So, I just sometimes have to like get in there at the 2, 3 in the morning and just like work on it. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And I didn't realize that coming into our conversation today. So that makes it that much more impressive because I think you're achieving a very high level of quality.
Oh, thank you.
And I have tried to do large projects on my own, and I know that it is not at all easy.
It's not. And again, especially since I do everything. If I was just doing like just the line work or like just one aspect of it, then it would be a little bit easier. But since I have to do everything from the writing and to all the way to just like I don't do the printing because I don't have a printer. But if I had a printer, I'd probably print it myself. Uh, but yeah, like it's just a lot of work. So, but again, it's a project I've had like in my head for years, and it wasn't until 2, 3 years ago that I decided, you know what, I want to actually have a physical thing, a physical comic. So that's when I decided to pull the trigger and just start doing it pretty much.
Was there anything at that point where you decided to pull the trigger? Any catalyst?
Actually, yes. There's a comic book shop around this area called the Comic Bug, and there's a group of people that meet up once a week called the Sketchy Bugs, and it's pretty much a bunch of illustrators, writers, anyone that that has something to do with comics that get together, meet once a week, and just talk comics. And a lot of them like do their own comics. And when I joined that group, like the I guess the thing that was always pushing me back to like not making a comic was that I wasn't sure I could do it. But seeing these people like actually making the comics, like having actual comics like, of their own comic, like make me go, I mean, if they can do it, why can't I? And that was the trigger for me to be like, okay, let's do it. Yeah. Whether I felt ready or not at that moment, like I just wanted to do it because I saw people do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and sometimes that's the most inspiring thing is you're holding yourself back because of this idea that oh, my idea is too big and the project is too big and it's going to be too much work. But if you're inspired by others and you see others doing it, sometimes that's just the push that you need to kind of, start running down or up the hill, depending on how tough the project is.
Yeah, exactly. Again, sometimes you're your own worst enemy, and all you need to do, you need sometimes is just to be around people that do the stuff that you think it's impossible for you to realize it's not impossible, and that you just do it.
Yeah, yeah. So the idea specifically, how many years before you went to the Sketchy Bug group, did you have the idea? What's the origin of the idea? Did you write some of it down and have, a notebook with all of your ideas together? And
Funny you should say that. Actually, this has been a story that has been in my head since I was in fifth grade.
wow.
So here I have a 23-year-old uh, first drawings of this characters. Hold on, give me 1 second. I'm gonna show you.
Yeah, take your time.
But these are the first. I don't know if you can see it in the camera. These actually let me turn off the filter here because so I can show you really quick. But I had the story. Well, like back in fifth, sixth grade, you write stories. Like in your own book, and I've had this whole story in my head, which was a generic. Which it was always like a story where I could have me and my friends as superheroes. So that's what it was. That's what it was always. And then from there, like year after year, I just had the story like evolve into something bigger, and I did so many rewrites. But this. There you go. You see it.
There we go.
This is a
Oh,
this is
yeah.
a 23, 24-year old drawing, like old drawing. So this is from back in fifth, sixth grade.
This looks to me to be, and you could confirm or deny, it looks very Saint Seiya inspired.
Yes, yeah, that was my other main trigger. This roster of all the characters I had back then. Obviously, like like I had so many,
Oh, that's
and
awesome
each
that
one
you
of
still
these
have
was
it.
one of my friends in school. So I would go around and ask them if they wanted to be part of my comic, and here is their names and their signatures saying that they wanted to be such and such character. So this is so this again, and as you can see, this is just like a bunch of notebooks just put together, just because and
And they
so I made
have,
my comic. And
yeah,
this,
they have stood the test of time.
yeah, here's some. I'm just gonna show a couple, and this is one of the first one. This is one of the first the color comic books I made back
This
again
is
in like fifth,
awesome.
sixth grade. Yeah, it's
Yeah, I
again,
love
this is a
this.
story I've had in my head forever, and it was always the fact that I was just not sure if I could do it, like to actually make like the actual comic, And it was again, it's just again, it's always your worst enemy. You like, you know. But I'm glad I followed. I started going to like the sketchy bugs because again, they're the ones that kind of like just gave me the confidence to be like, okay, just do it, So and here we are 23, 24 years later.
So what
I've had so
was
many iterations of the comic. I have like so many sketchbooks with the same first chapter, but like just so different. Each one's so different from each other. So
Yeah, what
yeah.
was the process like before you got introduced to the Sketchy Bug group? You know, from that point all the way back to when you were in fifth grade, were there years that you weren't working on it, or what was your state of mind for that chunk of time in between?
Uh, a lot of the times the different revisions of the comic like would have it would depend on the mood of each revision would depend on like what was happening in my life. So if I don't know something good happened, I would write an iteration of the comic where the characters would be happy, it would be like a rosy version of them, you know. If there was something bad going on in my life, it would be like a darker version, you know, like a kind of, you know, some of the main characters would die or stuff like that, you know, just you know. And at some point, right before I joined the Sketchy Bugs, I kind of I wanted to actually like make the actual comic, you know, like so I bought like a bunch of sketchbooks, and I started drawing them in sketchbooks. And for some reason, I was working with Photoshop. So at this point, it was me deciding whether I wanted to work on the comic like in just plain old paper, pen and paper, or go digital.
Right.
And so I started doing a few different versions in my sketchbook, and then it felt like it would be faster for me to do it digitally. So I did the same versions digitally. I went through a couple of different programs, and you know, later on that's when I also started like going online looking for groups that would have something to do with comic books. And that's when I found the sketchbooks, and I started asking a lot of other members questions, you know, like from all the way from what's a better way to work on a comic to all the way to like legality, you know, or
Mm.
even where to like go print the comic. And you know, a few months later, I started making my own comic. So
Wow. So a little bit more technical, but a question I have in my mind is after all of that kind of trial and error, where did you end up in terms of the tablet that you're using and the program that you're using to do your comic?
I use mostly Photoshop. That's my main program. I'm trying to learn other different programs to just in case I, you know, like I decide to move away from Photoshop. But Photoshop is my main program. Tablet, I bought myself a Wacom tablet, um, and I kind of like uh, you know, teach myself to use the pen tool,
Yeah.
the, you know, the actual pen in the tablet, because before that I would use a mouse, but that would, you know, that would destroy my hands. Like I
Yeah.
actually
Not
got
super
carpal.
efficient.
No, it's not. I got like a bit of carpal tunnel, like light carpal tunnel, like back in the day. So I decided to kind of just, you know, learn to use an actual Wacom tablet and pen. So just mostly just because, you know, I've heard many stories of artists just you know, they destroy their hands just because you draw all day, and especially with the mouse, it's just something you can't really draw with. But yeah,
Yeah. Clicking and moving and having your
it's just a way you have your
wrist in an
hand like
awkward position.
this. Instead of, you know, instead of how you grab a pen, it's easier on your hand too. So yeah, yeah.
Interesting. So were you also drawing with some consistency from the time you were in fifth grade until you joined Sketchy Bugs?
Yeah, I've been drawing for forever, so since I can remember. So yeah, I was, even if I wasn't drawing for my comic, like you mentioned, like I would go months or maybe a year or two without like not touching anything about my comic, and then as all of a sudden I would start like doing. I have like, again, like I mentioned, many sketchbooks of just like random drawings of my characters and all in my comics. So but yeah, I've been drawing for since I can remember. Yeah, I went to art school, so
Oh, okay.
just because I you know, I knew I wanted to just draw for a living.
And do you have an idea where that interest comes from? You know, interest in drawing and how it could you could maintain that interest for so long?
Well, let me put back my background because
Yeah, no problem.
I have four uncles that draw for a living.
Oh,
So,
okay.
and this background that you see right now is one of my uncles is a great artist, and that's all he's art.
Oh, wow.
So you know, I could say it comes, you know, it's in my blood, I guess. You know, it's just something I always felt I wanted to do. And again, I don't know if it's because, you know, because it, you know, comes from, you know, four uncles that do that for a living. So, but yeah, I always felt like that's what I wanted to do. You know, just art.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, I would say that the style that you draw universe protectors in is very well defined and very consistent issue after issue. And I wonder if you developed that style immediately before penning this comic, and if you arrived at this style right before you drew that comic, or if that was the style that you had already established years before.
Well, again, like I mentioned, I grew up with anime and manga, and I've always that was always like a big thing for me. I grew up in Mexico back in the 90s, and that's when manga was like extremely huge over there. So, Saint Seiya was the anime that
Right.
everyone back then like swore, by Saint Seiya. So that having grown up with that, like I I I like that style, So that's why that's kind of my style, like anime. I try sometimes. I found out that my style kind of like changes a little bit depending on what I do, what I used to draw. If I do digital, like it's more anime styled. But if I do watercolors or copics, like it's less, a little bit less anime looking. So, but
Any reason why? Have you
I don't know.
identified why?
It's just a different methods, I guess. I don't know if that have something to do with the way I go about making a piece, because it's a different to I don't know. Just I work. The method is differently when I do digital than when I do copics, just because again, just the nature of the the method, the material that I use. So
Sure.
yeah, but yeah, but again, having grown with Dragon Ball, Saint Seiya, Sailor Moon, all the I call them the big ones, the big anime, Evangelion, all that. So that's where I kind of got my style. Yeah.
Yeah, and it definitely comes through. I mean, as you were describing some of your inspirations, I looked at my notes and I wrote, "Oh, is he inspired by tokusatsu, which is the genre that includes Power Rangers?"
Yeah.
And specifically to that, though, I wondered if the scarf was related to that, because the scarf is oftentimes a piece of the motif or the costume of Power Rangers and Masked Rider or Common Rider. So is
I
that specifically where the scarf element comes from?
yeah, I found a lot of the scarf is used in a lot of the anime, not just the Power Rangers, but also a lot of the anime, to either just make it look cool, but in the Units Protectors, I kind of wanted it to like have a purpose, a big purpose. So and I'm not gonna spoil it here just because I want you guys to look at the book, but it has a big purpose to it. But I also thought it was cool, like just it's a cool factor, just have a scarf. So
Yeah, I always wondered if some brilliant person in Japan back in the day was like, all these Western superheroes, they have capes and they're a little big, and really it doesn't make sense. A villain could grab it easily. Something a little bit smaller, a little more subtle, but that still has that flow that could catch the wind. And they're
yeah,
like, a
yeah, exactly.
scarf.
Yeah, that definitely like helps with the just with the coolness of the factor.
Yeah, and I'm not any real historian on the matter, but do I have watched really old tokusatsu and shows that inspired Power Rangers in that genre.
Hmm.
And there's one called Moonlight Mask.
Hmm.
Gekko Kamen is the Japanese title. And yeah, he has, I think, like a little bit of a scarf. And he
Yeah.
actually was the inspiration for Super Saiyan Man in Dragon Ball Z, when
Oh.
Gohan wears the green motif and the turban and the
Yeah.
sunglasses. That's inspired by an old tokusatsu that
Nice.
the reason I bring it up, that may be one origin point for the scarf motif. Yeah, that's a specific area of interest for me, is tokusatsu. That's why
Yeah.
I wanted to ask about the scarf. And then what about the rings? I'm not as familiar with Saint Seiya, but I wonder if there's a
When it,
specific inspiration point for the rings. For me, I remember Captain Planet. That's a very
yeah.
specific American cartoon, though.
Yeah, no, I remember. Yeah, a lot of people keep asking me if the ring part was based on Captain Planet, and no, I think it was more based on Saint Seiya.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cool. Yeah, and I mean the evolution of the design, the character design, the costume, the armor design obviously changed since you were in fifth grade, and moved a little bit away from Saint Seiya, and even the helmet reminded me of Gotcha Man,
yeah,
which is a kind of bird motif helmet with a little bit of a point in the front.
yeah.
Uh,
Although, yeah, yeah. Again, if, Saint Seiya was a big part of the me designing the Inner Protectors, but I got rid of a lot of the characters' helmets in the comic, but I kept it on the main guy. So, but yeah, it was all Saint Seiya. Again, I can't stress enough how big it was, and I think it still is in Mexico. Like Sensei is so big. It was so big that during classroom, the teachers would sell us illustrations. I guess they got like their hands on like one drawing of Saint Seiya character. They went and make several copies, and they would sell it to us for like 10 cents a piece. And we were like all of us fifth, sixth graders would just buy them in bulk. Yeah. So
yeah.
yeah. So Saint Seiya was like huge, and that was a big part of of me growing up. So yeah. So
Yeah.
again, you can see Saint Seiya all over my comic. It's because it's just one of those amazing things that you grew up with, and like every time you think about it, you're like, oh my god, like sometimes when I'm working on my comic, I have Saint Seiya playing just on the background, and I'm not even watching. I'm just to have it as background noise because that just motivates the crap out of me, you know. So
that's that's awesome. And have you watched? I think Netflix might have released some newer Saint Seiya. Have you watched it? Is it any good?
I watched a few. They're, I mean, they're okay.
You'd rather just watch the old ones again, right?
Well, yeah, yeah, definitely. And again, this is probably one of it's probably a nostalgia factor because also when I watch the old ones, I'm like, this are not as good as I remember them to be. So it's more of the nostalgia factor, It's just it's one of those things that like that some things don't age well,
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, but it's still, but yeah, the newer ones. I mean, I watched a few episodes of one of the new ones. I think there's like a couple of different new ones, right? I
I think
can't
so
remember,
too.
but
Yeah.
I watched one. I watched like 10 episodes of the first one, and I was like, okay, but it's one of those things where like you stop watching for some reason or another, and then you forget that you were watching it. So it's one of those things that I'm like, okay, I need to go back and just watch just so I can at least say I watched the new one, even if it's not like grabbing me if it's not like like as inspiring as the old one. So, well, yeah, but I
Yeah.
mean, look, there was a point in my life back in the day where I thought all this stuff was gonna disappear. Like at some point, we weren't gonna see any Dragon Ball, any of the old stuff. But now that again, thanks to the internet, like everything is on we can if you want to watch an episode of like something you used to watch back in the day, even if you don't remember the name, you just Google, just keywords, and somehow you'll find it. So I'm glad, that these old shows, old stuff that we used to watch are not dead.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah. That's a really good point. Yeah.
but having said that, like a lot of this new, renewed stuff of based on the old stuff is not as good. So, but
Not
again,
quite
it's
the
also
same.
it's just nostalgia. I can assure
Yeah.
you, it's
Yeah. There's definitely that touches on a point that is not lost on me, which is in the 90s and even into the early 2000s, there was a sense of scarcity, before digital distribution became the thing that it is now. Either you had to have, speaking earlier to the 90s specifically, you had to have like somebody who somehow copied it on VHS recorded it when it was playing live on TV, and hopefully they made copies, and sometimes they made copies of copies of copies of copies, and so the tape quality was so degraded that it was almost hard to watch or listen to because it was so staticky and the VHS lines were running up and down the screen.
Yeah.
But you were just happy that you had it and preserved it.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that like back then, because of the sense of scarcity, the collector mentality made a lot more sense than it does to me now, because now everything's so readily available that collecting for me doesn't serve the same purpose as it used to.
Yeah.
And yet a lot of people still collect stuff, and if I love a series I will buy it on Blu-ray, but I used to buy series that I didn't love just to have them in
Just to
my
have them.
library for fear that they might disappear, like you said. So
Yeah, exactly. So again, that's what it's one of those things where you're like, you realize, oh, back in the day it sucked, but now like we have everything. So it's like that's why like that again, going back to the new Saint Seiya. That's why like I'm not. It's not the what the old one used to be, but I still appreciate it because I know how hard it was back then to have this. Yeah.
right,
Like I
right.
use the other Evangelion I watched was in the bad VHS copies that they would still sell it to us for like $60.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
it was the quality was so crappy, but it was still really expensive because the scarcity of it.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was so rare. I used to
Yes.
go, I grew up in New York, and I would go to Chinatown to these basements. I think I might have actually told Don Wynn this story. I told somebody the story, and just to shout out Don Wynn, he introduced us, and he's responsible in part for me
He's a
having
great guy.
Jose on today. So thank you, Don, again. Um, but yeah, I used to go to these down basement dungeons where they sold bootleg copies of copies, VHSs of Dragon Ball before it was televised,
Mm.
and it was like finding gold when we stumbled upon this place. But the quality was so bad it was hard to even watch. I mean, it
Yeah.
was like almost
It-
at some points some of the VHSs were like unintelligibly poor quality.
Yeah,
Um,
it was beautiful and horrible at the same time.
yeah.
But
That's part of the nostalgia, though. That's part of the lore of what we had to do to access
right,
this.
it's
And
the suffering that makes us stronger now.
exactly. And I should say that, we're talking a lot about what inspired you and things that seem to be referential material for you. But I
Mhm.
think that your style and your story itself, although inspired by some of these older comics and anime, is very unique to you, I think, and I assume some of the themes might be personal because the themes that you're touching on are very poignant and strong. So I wonder if you want to talk about, before I put words in your mouth, if you want to talk about any of the themes that you wanted to explore when you went into finally drawing and writing this story for publication.
Well, the I guess the main since I the story uh, since I had the story in my head for since for fifth sixth grade, the main theme of it has always been like how weird the world can be sometimes. How for someone growing up, it's always like, I don't know, it doesn't make sense, as you grow up. So I decided, in the comic, I decided to just throw in the element of magic, of monsters, just to kind of like emphasize just how weird everything is. That was always it. How it is to grow up, how hard it is to not just find friends, but to keep them.
Mm.
So that was part of the main thing, and I just threw in the magic and the monsters because like that was always I was always fantasizing what it would be like to just fight monsters alongside friends. That was one of those things that again, this was how they do it in Sailor Moon, where like they're all friends just fight monsters. It's the same thing in my comic. Just how cool it would be to have powers and just go around the city jumping jumping building through building with your friends, just fighting monsters. But yeah, but the main focus just just growing up in a weird world.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
in 2020 it got just weirder. So you know.
Yeah, and I think maybe that's one of the reasons why reading the comic today before we jumped on this call, it resonated so much with me, because I think it highlights the like some feelings of loneliness even when there are people around you, and questions of who you can trust and when you could trust them and how long you could trust them, and what what's the basis of trust. And the main character in your story is encountering new people and deciding kind of very quickly if they will become an ally or not,
Mhm.
in maybe Sailor Moon like tradition. um and yeah, I think that you touched on that in a very direct but also somehow subtle way. And I appreciated that. I don't know if you want to talk to that specific point at all anymore.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of I don't know. It's just I mean, I've never considered myself a great writer, but I just try to throw in the comic just little instances that I assume we all go through, when meeting new people, just you know, it just one of the big questions that we all always have when meeting people is like, can I trust? Like how much can I trust before, like I find out, oh, this person was just using me, or stuff like that. And that's what the main character Steven uh, has to go through. Not when meeting these girls, and we're meeting everyone pretty much, because half of the people they meet are turn out to be monsters, and half of the people they meet they actually want to help him, but he doesn't know. And I get again, I'm in the comic. I'm taking it to the extreme, but that's just I feel that's just how you feel in real life. Just this, you sometimes you have to tippy-toe through circumstances, when meeting people, just because maybe back maybe growing up you had bad experiences meeting people, and so now you're just you're more aware that they might happen to you again, so you know you just shield yourself.
Yeah, yeah, but at some point, hopefully, you're able to drop the shield. And I love, and I don't even need to talk about it specifically, but basically, two groups of characters meet, and at some point, they both have the same question about, can I trust this person? And it's happening, almost simultaneously. That they meet and they see that they should probably collaborate, but they both have this kind of anxiety or suspicion of the other, the person that they don't know, the person that they just met. And I think that that's a really cool. It's very simple, but it's also very profound to present it from the same thing from two perspectives like
Yeah,
that.
definitely. Yeah. So and again, there different people react to the same circumstance differently. For example, Caroline and Valerie in my comic. Caroline is really defensive. She's not trusting. When Valerie, she's more like a little kid when she finds Steven. She's all over him because he just defended them from three thugs.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
and Steven is just like, okay, I had to do it because I had to defend you because I wasn't gonna stand there just not do anything, but I still wanna see where you're at. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And Steven also comes from I mean, he's as a character, he's the main character of the story. We start off the first issue of the comic with him defending those two characters, and he is essentially an orphan and homeless. And I think you write to that story really well, and you articulate him as a character and that experience really well. So I wonder if you have experience, or people who have had experiences growing up without a home or without a family or other difficult circumstances that are similar.
Yeah, I met a handful of people that that fall into that category, and again, this goes back to having this story in my head for the longest time. I always ask myself, what would that feel like being in that position, in whatever position they are. So, what would it feel like to be homeless and out on the streets? I try to put myself in my character's position, and also it's just again throughout the years meeting people that are in those kind of circumstances. Like while I don't necessarily go and exactly like ask these people like what their experiences have been, like it makes me imagine what they're going through. So that's again, it's mostly just putting myself in my character's shoes, in other people's shoes that go through this you know different circumstances, and I just go from there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Those, I mean, those points all really re- resonated with me, not on a personal level, but the way that you wrote it and the way that you illustrated it and the pacing of your story makes it feel quite real. And the characters are relatable. So I definitely commend you on that in your storytelling. Do you
Thank you.
have a favorite aspect of? Obviously, you are artist and illustrator, but the story is really good and the pacing is really good. So I wonder if you have a favorite aspect, and let's say hypothetical world, you have funds to have 3 or 4 of the tasks done for you. Which areas would you be really happy to let go and relinquish control and have a third party, a partner work on that area with you? And which areas would you not give up for anything?
Well, definitely, I would definitely want to keep the writing it myself, and draw and at least do the line art. Again, like I mentioned earlier, I've always have a hard time with color, but again, like I also mentioned earlier, it's only digitally. Like color just is so difficult for me. I don't know why, but when it comes to doing Copics or watercolor, like it's more enjoyable. So I would definitely, if I ever had the funds, I would probably like get a colorist, and a letterer, because lettering is one of those, all those like are that's it's something that it's like it's like doing backgrounds in animation. If it's well done, no one will notice. But if there's something wrong with it, everyone will point it out. So it's the same thing with lettering. So I would definitely get a letterer and a colorist to help me out with this. But everything else, the story and the actual drawing, like I'll keep it for myself, because I enjoy that a lot. I enjoy the part where I have to structure the panels, where everything goes, that they just laying it out, and like if you go through my comics, like if you look at the first one and then you look at the latest one, you'll see that you kind of see that I'm getting a little better. But that's one of the things that I've learned, that I enjoy, just laying everything out first. That's part of the process that I really enjoy, and it's something that it's hard. I work through it. It's hard. It's stuff that I have to like figure out. But in the end, when it's done, I'm like, yeah, like this is pretty cool. So
Yeah, yeah. So what is your process exactly? Um, Say you're making a new issue, and you are writing the story, and are you drawing as you write the story? And what's the step from I'm going to release a new issue to the issue being released?
Well, I first go back to the old sketchbooks that I showed you, because that's where I get the main material, and I don't want to like stay like I don't want to stray too far from the original material, the themes. So I go back to those. I have so many other sketchbooks that have notes of like, oh, this character interacts this way with this other character, or these are the points of the story that shouldn't change at all, blah blah blah. So I go through all that, and based on all the stuff that I already written throughout the years, I make the script for the issue. So then I send it to, I have an editor that helps me to kind of like just pretty much just make the writing, sound good, and he helps me edit it a little bit. His name is Juan Ponce. Don also knows him. We're all part of the Sketchbook. So he's a great writer, and I'm working on a little comic for him. So but he helped me edit the story, so it's nice and consistent and sounds good. So after the story, he approves just the editing of the story and all that. I started just sketching, and again I go back to the old material just to kind of like see, again, not just to have it all look like it should be part of the same, of the same the story.
Right.
So I sketch it, and I start sketching the layout of the panels of the whole page, and then I start adding the dialogue balloons and all that stuff. Everything that is written, everything that's gonna that's gonna define what the panel looks like, because there's text here or text there. That's where I start adding all that at the very beginning, because I don't want the text balloons to feel like a second thought. I want to kind of there be like have them be part of the art,
Yeah, yeah.
so
Is that
after
typical? Do you find that to be typical that people plan on the location of the text bubbles ahead of time?
I follow a few letters on Twitter, and that's the one thing that like they always complain about, that the artist doesn't consider where the balloons are gonna go. So
Mm,
they have to work hard to kind of make the balloon fit within the panel and within the art. So that's something that kind of like I'm always thinking like, okay, like I don't want to have that problem if I'm ever able to hire a letterer, So I try to do it myself. I try to get into the letterer, like head space, and just be like, okay, so if this character is gonna say this, then this balloon should be here, and yada yada, So that's part of the layout process,
yeah, and that's like a more comprehensive design mind oriented mind that you approach your art uh, from, and I think that's cool. I've done a little bit of graphic design in the past, and kerning and fitting letters into a limited amount of space and conveying a certain message with letters in a certain amount of space is a really difficult job. And just as you were talking, I thought of an example that might illustrate it to people who haven't worked in such spaces.
Mhm.
Maybe and you could agree or disagree, and just to illustrate this to other listeners, but perhaps the story on Instagram, when you add text to it and you realize that it doesn't look good, you have this text and maybe you applied a color and you have to cut down the length of the sentence to fit in a space, and then you're moving the text around to try to make it fit well with the image that you're describing.
Yeah.
That I think is kind of an illustration that more people could relate to, and you're doing that on a pane by pane basis for the comic when you're illustrating, and keeping in mind that there has to be bubbles here that have words.
Yeah, yeah, and no, and also another thing that I also lately I've been trying to think as I'm working on these layouts. The page looks different on your screen, and it looks so much different when you print it. So it's one of those things that sometimes I try to print it on my crappy little printer here just to see how it's gonna look once it's printed. But
Sure.
and the text again is one of those things like you kind of like have to like think about, because text has to always be clear, has to be like readable, and it's one of those things that like like if you don't again it looks good on the screen, but once it's printed, it's like there's little things here and there. Oh, this part looks blurry, or somehow like again the kerning or stuff like that you have to work on. And it's one of those it's another one of those things that if you look at my first comic, the text is really big, it's blocky, and then and every time I print one, like, oh crap, this is too big. Okay, so next issue, uh, I have to go a point lower and choose a different way to, like, to go on about the text. So every issue for me is a learning experience. It's like I learned something new, because again, before this I had never done comics. Everything was just drawn on my sketchbook or drawn on the computer, but nothing that was to be printed on a comic book format. So it's one of those things that I'm always thinking about when I'm working on the layout, and I go back and look at the old at the previous issues that I printed, and I'm like, okay, so this is what I shouldn't do, or the the lines in these panels are like too thick. I need to go out a bit smaller, stuff like that. Just or the art in this page using this color like came out too dark, so I have to like kind of like think of like, okay, so I shouldn't make this panel in this new comic dark because you won't be able to see it when it's printed and stuff like that. So
Yeah, and
it's
when you're designing it, are you planning for and are you designing with a traditional page turn in mind? Or, when I read it, I was scrolling, so I was going,
oh
it
yeah
was scrolling, the image, the pages were scrolling up in front of me. But traditional comic book is obviously reading
yeah
left to right.
yeah. I designed it with like in having in mind that it's gonna be on a comic book, but yeah, the PDFs that I send you, they're all just
Yeah,
from
and
top to bottom.
I wondered because I saw some potential patterns, and I wasn't sure if it was intentional or not, that would make sense, that kind of created some visual consistency between one page stacked on top of the other.
Mm.
But I suppose it was just the nature of the scene that was playing out, that those two panes
Yeah,
connected together well, even in a top and scrolling orientation.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I kind of interrupted you as you were talking through your
No,
uh,
that's yeah.
process. I think
Oh, the
we left
process.
off with you drawing and sketching with um, dialogue bubbles in mind. And if you
Yes.
if you want to get up, I see that the sun is in your face a little bit. If you want
Yeah,
to
let me just
shut
close
a
really
blind.
quick. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, no problem. Take your time.
All right, there you go. That's should be okay.
Yeah, and if at any time you need to use the restroom or
Oh,
grab water or something, yeah, don't hesitate. I could
oh no, that's
either
that's fine.
edit it
I
out
was
or whatever.
like for the meeting. Like I'm like, okay, so I just did whatever I have to do, so I didn't have to get up. So we're good. We're good. Don't worry.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, the process. Yeah. So after after I have a really like I've sketched out the layout of the page. Then I start to building the actual panels. Just the borders or how they're gonna interact one with the other. So that's when I start to get into the line work. So I start drawing, doing the line work. Then after I'm done with that, I start blocking. So, I separate like the background, the background from the characters, and if there's gonna be foreground elements or so on and so on. And after that, I start just doing the color. So yeah, and and then after I'm done with that, like sometimes I go back and I move stuff around or edit or just change stuff that doesn't look correct, like right. But as an artist, you're never happy with your work, even when as I look at like the printer or the previous issues, I'm like, okay, at some point in the future, I'm gonna go back and like, and I'm gonna make like a like another revision to this comic and reprint it again because this doesn't look good. Yeah. So, but again, it's one of those things. When you're an artist, you're never happy with your work, and never. Yeah.
That's sage advice, I think. I think that's advice that everybody, it's hard to say that yourself about
Yeah.
yourself,
Well, see that for
and
years and years,
accept it.
yeah, I come to terms with it. Like I'm never gonna be happy with my work, but that's just the nature of this. Like so I'm trying to use it as a like as an excuse to be better, like never. I mean, it's always never be satisfied with what you do, but at the same time, like sometimes you have to give yourself a break and understand that, like, you're always doing the best you can do, but you're
Right.
never gonna be happy. But because you're never gonna be happy, you know, try to continue doing the best you can do.
Yeah, and also the reason, or yeah, because you are never happy, you are always moving forward and improving. So hopefully you're unhappy for different reasons,
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
And
Yeah.
you learned from the last issue, you improved that the reasons why that one made you unhappy, and now you've moved on to other reasons that make you unhappy.
Yeah, again, it's the reasons are never gonna end, but again, it's, as an artist, you never stop learning. So, just use that to better yourself.
Yeah, and so what's, talking about your first issue, how long did that take you to put together time wise? And what's the time frame that you have set for yourself for each subsequent issue that you've released?
It usually, well, before 2020, it used to take me about 3 to 4 months for per issue. So, and again, it, it's
Jose, I think that's amazing. I mean, I don't know that much about production myself, but considering you're one person, um,
well, that was
I'll
for the
give you a
first.
little bit of a wow moment, because that sounds like a very short turnaround for the
Thank you. Well, that was,
quality of
well,
material you're releasing.
again, this was for the first 4 issues, and when I was, but the fifth issue was, I was about to finish it off about a year ago, but then, COVID happened, and then like the motivation just dropped. Like, so I didn't touch it for like 4 or 5 months, and then I started working on it again, and I finished it. So that one took longer. That one took about what, like 9, 10 months, because I just was into it. And the issue I'm working on, issue 6, that's been taking me also, like, for as long as the quarantine has been going on, because it's just, nowadays it's a little bit harder for me to get in the headspace to kind of
Hmm.
work on it. Uh, but also I guess my attention span isn't, I don't know if it's because of the pandemic, but I just decide I don't feel like working on it, so I do other things. For example, usually every October, every September and October, I do like what is it? Well, there used to be like an Inktober,
Hmm.
uh, stuff like that. So I do nothing but just like drawings every day of like whatever, uh,
Whatever the themes are, and
yeah, so
yeah.
I don't touch the comic at all, like during those months, because I've been doing that for before I started, for since before I started working on my comic. I used to do that every September or October. And it's one of those things that I just keep doing every year, just because it's cool. It's just nice. It's a way to kind of like challenge myself.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
And so that's why I haven't touched this latest issue that I'm working on that much. So, but yeah, but it takes about 3 4 months, assuming circumstances are not as bad as they are at the moment.
Yeah, yeah. I wonder, and you are definitely not alone to kind of, despite maybe in my case, and I'll speak from my experience, maybe having a little bit more time available in some areas, but still not having the motivation, and like you said, not being in the headspace to create. Um, it's I personally, I've had trouble pinning down exactly why, and I wonder if you have any insight into that for you, because it's something you definitely shouldn't beat yourself up over. I think a lot of people out there are feeling that way. And I think people listening, including myself, would benefit from hearing from another creator, why are we feeling this way?
Well, I mean, I just assume it's just like the stress of the way the world is right now. It's kind of hard to at least for me, it's kind of hard to get into the creative headspace when there's so much stuff in the back of my head. Again, it's one of
Mhm.
those reasons why like I'm trying to stay away from social media because okay, like so everything is bad in the world. I know this already. I don't need to hear it. So let's see if by like straying away from social media, I can kind of get back into creating. So it's just hard to get motivated when it feels like like the world is just burning.
Right.
And right now, if there's a moment in time where all of us should be allowed to kind of take it easy and not be trying to rush to be creating every day, is right now.
Mm.
Because there it's right now we need to focus on just on ourselves at the moment. Yeah, so we don't, because we were like before 2020, like it was just easy to just work yourself, work every day, just create every day, and then just burn yourself out, and then take a couple of weeks off, and do like something. Yes, just go on a trip, or just do literally nothing. But right now, like, we're all stuck inside. Uh, there's bad news all around. So even if we wanna like just take a break, like in the back of our mind, like we can't because we're just so stressed out. So it's just better, it's understandable that if you can't really create right now, you know,
Yeah, I
again, it's
agree.
one. It's we if it's gonna help us to get through this by just not do anything, then by all means, it's just
Right.
the
Yeah,
way the
take the
way the
time.
world is right now that's not letting us, like, or maybe it's the other way around, because sometimes I feel like the only way to not think of anything is to just do things like all day every day.
That's I
So
think my that's my approach. Maybe not doing the things I really want to do, but
but just be busy, so busy that you can't think about anything else. Yeah, and again, like, I did that this September, October. I did for I would just draw all day every day, do just and then I guess I burned myself out, and that's why I haven't done much lately,
yeah.
because I'm just like a little like, okay, just trying to get back. It's like in video games where, like, you push a button to do something, and then you need like a cool off, a few minutes to cool off. It's the same thing. It's
Like
just need to cool off.
your heat meter, you
Yeah,
overheated kind of thing.
yeah, you just need to cool off, and then once you get your energy bar back, like, you go back at it. But yeah, it's totally understandable if people are not, are not feeling the motivation to create right now. It's fine.
Yeah, and on the flip side, I have been keeping busy with things like building a TV stand out of wood and woodworking and stuff like that. But I've also been more recently, and I guess in generally over the pandemic, but not necessarily consistently, trying to process the things that we're going through as a society and a human race, together with the pandemic, processing that through my creativity and storytelling, and trying to, like, not only do we have the pandemic, but political and social and
Yes.
cultural issues. And I think those are, all of that compounds on top of one another, and it gets hard to sort through. And so
Yeah.
for me, I do some story writing, and through the story writing, trying to process and think about some of those issues, that I don't necessarily want to, or I can't think about directly. Sometimes
Mhm.
it's easier to process and think about them through the lens, and like your story, having multiple perspectives, thinking about these issues through storytelling and multiple perspectives in the story that I'm writing. But like I said, I also have not done so consistently, but
Yeah.
sometimes it is a nice release.
Yeah, and like I said, it's fine right now. Right now, it's we're okay, because I see a lot of artists. Again, since I'm in Twitter a lot, I see a lot of artists like put these posts where they try to explain to their followers they're trying to apologize because they're not creating, and I'm just thinking, like, it's okay right now. It's okay. It's fine. Like, it feels like a lot of these artists, like, shouldn't be apologizing for that. You know,
Yeah, I have an account where I have some Patreon supporters, and I do have a little bit of guilt that I haven't kept up with the level of consistency that I expect of myself. And I realize that sometimes maybe I expect more from myself than they expect from me. But still, I feel some level of obligation because they're supporting my work, and I like it's so amazing to have people support your work in that way that I want to make sure I deliver. So I've been in this headspace too, where as a creator, and I should mention this is separate from the podcast.
mhm.
Um, as a creator, I've thought about, should I apologize or make some comment
Well, I
or
mean, it's
address this issue? So it's interesting that you mentioned
I
it.
I mean, look, I mean, I was going to say that like I'm pretty sure like like people understand, but at the same time, I've seen some posts where people are complaining to their artists that about them not posting anything. So I know it's one of those for me, it's one of those things where I don't know, like it's being an art. Part of being an artist is always feeling guilty when you don't do when you don't create every day.
Yeah.
But again, we have to go back to the part where we're going. The world is going through some really crazy circumstances right now. So everyone should understand that you know like sometimes it's okay to not create every day. I know. But at the
Yeah,
same
no,
time,
I think
again, it's one of those things where like you go back and forth where like people should understand, but people are not don't not all of people are understanding.
yeah, I think your advice and what you're saying makes me feel more at ease. So I'm glad that you shared it, and I think a lot of people benefit from hearing that. Hey, if you're a creative out there, if you're an artist out there, it's okay to take a break.
It
Like
definitely is
things are
okay.
a little bit crazy. Take some time and
Yeah,
recalibrate when you need
look,
it.
if back in the normal days it was fine to take a break. Right now, we all of us creators need to take a break. Otherwise, like that's when you see creators just breaking down, and we don't want that right now. Right now, we all need to keep ourselves just mentally as healthy as possible. And if you have to take a break, if you have to go on a long hiatus with your art, do it. The you if the people that don't understand that you need a break, if your followers that don't understand you need a break, then do you really want to have those kind of followers? You want to have the followers that comprehend, that you need a break, because
Yeah, and I
people
think
need to
most.
understand people need to understand that us creators, we're always creating no matter what, and it's always in the back of our head, because like but it that mentality of us just as creating even when we're not creating in the back of our head, like it takes a toll. So like us creators, like we're always there's always a battle in our head, all the time. And like and when we don't actually throw something out there in the world, especially nowadays with social media, like we feel awful. But it we're all human. We all have to take breaks, and especially right now, like any artist that doesn't post that I follow that doesn't post anything, I'm like, all right, I totally understand. Like sometimes you just need to shut down. you know
Yeah, 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 yeah. Shut down and shut off. Very,
yeah,
very
definitely.
good advice. And as
Yeah,
it pertains to audiences, I think that if you're really in tune with your audience, you should be able to maybe craft a message, and you don't necessarily need to apologize. It's not something to apologize about, but you could give notice that, guys, I'm taking
yeah,
a week
yeah,
off, or
yeah, definitely
something
give
like
notice,
that.
but
Know your audience, I would say.
yeah, like that's a good point. Like you give notice, but again, I just feel bad for these creators that apologize, and you can see
Don't
it in
feel
their
guilty,
post.
right?
Yeah, like and I feel really bad for them because I'm in the back of my head, I'm thinking like, why don't feel like that? Like we understand, but again, there's people that don't understand. So yeah,
Yeah, and I mean, for my other project, I have a very small following, and I want to keep up, and I feel some obligation for the people who are supporting me and following that project. But also, I feel guilty from, and you alluded to this. I feel guilty myself for myself because I'm not keeping up with a pace and a promise that I kind of made to myself, and I'm not pushing that project forward. And it's my passion project, and if I ever want to achieve the goals that I have set for myself, I need to keep moving forward. So I'm benefiting now from you telling me and telling anybody else listening that it's okay to take a break. So thank you.
I think it's one of those. I mean, it's one of those things that they should teach either at art school or whatever, or just in general, that like people, like it's okay to take breaks. Like that 40-hour work. Uh, like it's not. I don't know. It doesn't. It's I don't know. It's something that should be taught in school, that you don't need to work yourself to death.
And
You know.
I would kind of pose it this way: how many people working a 40-hour a week job are actually working those 40 hours?
Well, yeah,
A lot maybe, but some people are only working 30 of those 40.
yeah,
I
definitely.
mean, speaking for myself, I'll say, because I know a lot of people out there are working very hard at the jobs
Yeah,
and working overtime and stuff. But there's some moments during a workday where I need to take 10 minutes to just have my mind wander and my eyes look around and daydream a little bit.
yeah,
Otherwise,
definitely.
I'll go insane, right? And
Oh yeah, of course. No, yeah, I do that too. Like,
that's part of the workday, but it's not necessarily contributing to 40 hours, quote unquote, of work. So
yeah, I mean, it just
yeah.
helps you to not go insane. So.
Exactly. Yeah, going back a little bit to our conversation. I wonder how much you're keeping from the canon. I feel like you have this canon from when you were in fifth grade and when you were growing up and generating these ideas. And you mentioned having notes that said, like, this character would react this way and have this sort of experience. And I'm wondering, like, what ideas did you cut out? Which for creatives, oftentimes the phrase comes up, killing your darlings.
Mm.
And I wonder what darlings, if any, you have slaughtered in the making of Universe Protectors, and um, you know how hard they were to let go and the process of letting them go.
Well, like I showed you earlier, that big roster of characters from in that sketchbook. I I had to get rid of a lot of them, mostly because it just felt like the story would be really cluttered. It would feel at least a little difficult for me to write all of these characters. I don't know. It just and again, I decided to do this years ago. Also, like I felt like I was I was just throwing like all those characters just because my friends wanted to be in my comic. And so a lot of them were like, okay, so throughout the years, I'm like, okay, I don't this character, it's okay if I let him go. There were some other characters I was like, like it took me a bit to kind of like find a reason why to get rid of them, but in the end, I'm like, I decided to just, it would benefit the story, because again, I didn't want it to be like a convoluted mess either. Like, I
Yeah,
know
yeah,
if
yeah.
I know like again throughout the years, I refined the story, like the events changed, but again in the end, it just felt like uh, uh, less is more, I guess. At least in these in this story anyway.
I think so. Yeah, there's definitely a feeling of intimacy as you're introducing the characters, and their relationships are developing on the page. And if you had more characters inserted there, there would be less room for that character and relationship development. So I think that's a wise decision for sure.
Yeah. Having said that, though, I don't know if after I'm done with the 16 issues, I'm gonna be, or maybe I'm probably gonna start working on it later. I want to do like little side stories that includes characters that like that I had from back in the day. So I mean, I got rid of them in the main story, but I'm definitely gonna have like be having like some of these characters emerge in little side stories, which again, it's just some of these characters that I can't let go no matter what, even if I don't put them in the main one in the main story. So
Yeah, and how conclusive is the 16 story arc? Is that like a final punctuation on the story for this, let's say, for this generation of characters, or is there room for their story? And do you have plans for their story to continue on in
it,
another arc?
this is one of those things I always think about. It's always in the back of my head. I mean, I don't think I want the story to like completely end that by issue 16. But at the same time, it just feels like I'm still not even halfway through the through the issue, so I don't try to think about it too much, But maybe
Yeah,
those little side stories are gonna be a way to continue like the story, you know, like the main Universe Protectors 16 issue story will be done, but like it would be like the Marvel stories, the Marvel TV shows, as opposed to the main movies with the
right.
side
Yeah,
stories.
yeah. It's always interesting when somebody's kind of building a pretty comprehensive universe and man, killing your darlings and removing some ideas in the story itself that you loved is difficult enough, but deciding to conclude to some degree a universe that you've dreamed up since you were in fifth grade is the hardest darling to kill of all, I imagine. and
Yeah,
yet and yet I would say that the anime, the comics, the all of the media that I love most doesn't stretch itself too thin, and they end maybe a season earlier than they in my mind should have, but because of that they're ending at such a high point that they've solidified their place in my heart and my mind and my memory as such a great story. Whereas a lot of American series, let's just talk about American sitcoms in
mhm.
particular, like go on for 8 9 seasons,
Yes.
and by the end they're ending the show because nobody's watching it anymore because the quality has deteriorated so much. So that's always an interesting point for me is when are you gonna put a ending on it?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. The again, the the old story, the real really old book. It went. I drew it forever. And at some point, because of this, that's when I decided that I wanted the comic, the Universe Protectors comic to not go farther than like than 16. So that's why I want to end it at 16, just because yeah, like you said, I don't want it to go on forever just because, you know. And at the same time, like I said, I want to I want it to continue in the little side stories, but also want to because again, it's one of those, it was the story that's been in my head forever. I want it to end at some point. It's gonna feel to me like some sort of closure.
Yeah, yeah,
It's just because again, it's been in my head forever, and
right,
it's nice and all, but at some point I want to be over with it and move on to something else.
right, yeah.
So
I
I that's why I want, and again, for 3 or 4 months per issue times 16, I still have at least 5 years working on this if I stick to it. So I don't want to be in my 50s and still like be working on it. I want to, I want to, I love it. It's my story and all that. But at some point I do want it to be over. Just because I will, after I'm done with it, I'm gonna feel like I'm free to move to something else. There are one of the reasons why I don't fully go out there looking for comic book jobs is because I want to focus on my comic. Well, that and also because I have a full-time job. But I don't pursue like a side gig. I just doing other comic book art because I want to focus on this first, on my comic first. So that's why I want at some point I want it to end so I can feel free to
Mm.
to do other things. Yeah.
And
As
do
much
you
as I
have
love my
a
comic, yeah,
yeah
as much as I love my comic, like it'd be nice to be able to work on something else and not have it in the back of my head like, oh, I have to work on this issue now. Yeah.
yeah.
So
I mean, when you're the producer, the writer, the creator, the inker, the penner, um, you know, nobody's going to do it but you, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah,
And
that's the other reason because like I mentioned earlier, this is my baby and I want it to be 100% me. When once this is done, if I want to make side stories, I can just focus on the story and the line work, and then it's gonna be easy for me to hire a colorist. So I'll feel safer letting other people touch the side issues. Yeah.
right, right.
So
Do you have a vision for when the 16 issue arc ends, what you want to work on after that and how you want to work after that?
well,
I mean, that's maybe quite a ways away, but do you have a story in mind or a
I have a
specific function in a collaboration?
I definitely want to collab with other writers. Again, Juan Ponce, he's an amazing writer, and I'm always helping. I'm always doing the artwork for some of his comics, but I want to definitely like collab with other people. I mean, full time, like within my free time. Uh, um, there's also I've also like read another little like stories from back in the day that I want to work on. That's they're not my main like my darling comic like the Universe Protectors, but it's something other that I wanna work on, so I can kind of like explore different like methods of like of working on a comic. Like maybe the next comic after Dunes Protectors is not gonna be digital. Maybe I was gonna go full like watercolor and then scan them in and then add all the like the speech bubbles and stuff like on digitally, but the arc itself is gonna be watercolor stuff like that. Like I want to explore different like ways of doing comic, but I don't want to do it with Unity Protectors because it's already digital. I don't want to like all of a sudden have a be all of them digital and then one issue all of a sudden like have the art be watercolor because I just want to stick to one to one way of at least for the Unity Protectors anyway.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe you can release an alternate version of a issue that's in watercolor.
Yeah,
Just spitballing ideas, but I think it would be cool to, and that would cut down on the amount of work you would have to do for release of a watercolor issue. If the panes are relatively set, something like that, you just wanted to color it in watercolor.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I just want to stuff like that. But again, I won't be able to fully do that until I'm done with my comic. So and
Right.
that's why I kind of wanted it to end also. So I'm free. So I'm freed from it.
Yeah, I think everybody could definitely relate to that sense of loving something, but also wanting closure to move on from it,
Yes.
especially in uh, creative spaces. When you release each issue, how do you promote it, and how do you fund it, and try to get it in the hands of an audience?
Well, I just before COVID, the guys at the comic book would like let me do like a like a just have it in the comic book shop, and also I use all the social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Sometimes I use Coffee, the Kofi.
What's that? I
Uh,
haven't heard of that one.
that's you post your art in there, and if people wanna like donate like $1 or so, just if it's just a donation based site where you post your art. Again, I use it all for social media, and I also have my website too. And again, I just throw the link out there, just throw all the social media. Um, yeah.
Yeah, so you haven't kickstarted any of
Mm,
your comics so
No,
far?
I not no. I want to try to see if I can do that for the next issue, but I need to go through, I need to learn how to go about it.
Yeah, it's a big it's a definitely a big undertaking, but
It's
I think that
I
you
mean I'm not against Kickstarter or Patreon. I mean thank God I kind of have the means to, I guess, just pay for the printing, or but so maybe that's why I don't feel like I should do Kickstarter. But but everyone I know like does, use the Kickstarter and Patreon and all that. So I guess that's probably one of the next steps for me to kind of like educate myself to how I would be able to use Kickstarter or Patreon to kind of fund the comic. Because again, it's a lot of work. It's printing. It's not cheap,
right.
and I just use it's I just use my money to print it. So yeah, definitely I'm definitely gonna start trying to get into it. And I know a lot of the people that do comics that I know, like they use Kickstarter. So that's probably the next
Yeah,
step.
yeah. A lot of the comic book artists and writers who I've interviewed so far have, you know, used Kickstarter recently or in the past to kickstart their projects
Yeah. No,
and
yeah,
fund them. So
totally.
I was curious.
And also at the same time, I feel like I'd be able to do a good job with Kickstarter because I have so much material that I've made throughout the years that I'm pretty sure if the people that get into my comic, they probably would like to have like artwork from when I was in 12th grade, or I don't know. I feel like I have some material that I could
Well,
I could.
I mean, I love, and I have some similar projects that I have drawing. Projects that I'm still thinking about doing or working on actively that I have drawings from when I was a kid. And I really relate to that. And I also think it's super cool that yours is this very specific story and you have so much material
I do.
from all stages of your life, and I think that's just ripe for sharing with the audience. And another thing that you could consider doing that I've seen done before is, if you're kickstarting issue 8, to also for one tier include copies of the previous issues and stuff like that.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
kickstarting for one issue, but you could catch up a potential fan and pull them into the fold by offering a tier that gives them each issue leading up to the issue that you're currently working on. So
Yeah, definitely. I definitely want to get into that just because financially definitely would help because nowadays it's
yeah,
gonna
yeah,
it's
yeah.
expensive, but at the same time I see a lot of artists that use Kickstarter, and it's just amazing like how much the bigger reach of that they have using stuff like Kickstarter. So I want to try it. That definitely it's definitely been on my mind for a bit now, but you know it's one of those things that again I just feel like I need to feel ready, but at the same time it's like you never feel fully ready, so I'm just gonna jump in.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. It's I mean, it's kind of like starting, going to Sketchy Bug and getting inspired by other artists and starting your journey that has, led you here today where you have 5 issues of a comic
Yeah.
out. And the time needs to be right, and it has to be right for you. And only you can make that decision,
Yeah,
obviously.
but at the same time, you don't wanna wait like I did. I waited for 32 years, for 23 years to just to actually work on my comic. That's one of the things that I kind of like, not regret, but definitely like it took me that long to feel ready,
Right,
and
right.
that was one of the main. That's one of the things that I always think of like whenever I was in the sketchy used to go to the meetups with the sketchy bugs, and some of the newer members would ask me, like I know I would bring it up for them to not wait until they fully feel ready. Sometimes you just have to take a leap of faith, leap of faith in yourself. So yeah, I'm always telling them like, don't be like me. Don't wait 23 years to do something. Just sometimes you just have to do it.
Yeah, yeah. I have quite a few more questions. I'm trying to put them in my mind in some structured order. But, it is pretty amazing that you turn around the comics so quickly. And I wonder how you structure your time and are you a very organized person? Because I am not organized and I could benefit from some organization. And I'm sure a lot of people who are creative can benefit from hearing how somebody uh, you know, coming into creating a comic as your first comic can turn around such a high quality product in such a short amount of time, and how you seem to have replicated some sort of I, I'm just guessing, but potentially some sort of systematic approach to generating the comics in such a short window.
Well, I pretty much I just try to break down like the way I make the comic. Like I said, the first I write the story. I try to just lay out like the different steps. I'm not that organized either. I'm not as organized as I would like to be, but like I just think of just the main blocks. And each step it has its little steps. So, I just try to stick to it I try to stick to it every time I work on an issue, but also having in the back of my head like what I learned from the previous issue, like so yeah, it just the method, just have the method and then break it down into the steps and then what you need to do to accomplish each step. So and also a lot of coffee because I work on these like after I can't really work on this stuff while my kid is awake, because whenever he sees me with like on in front of the computer or this with a drawing, he wants me. I don't know. He just wants me to get away from it. He wants me to go and play
How
with
old
him.
is he?
He's gonna be 6. So and so I've learned that I can't really work on my comic while he's awake. So that's why. So whenever he goes to sleep around 9, 10, that the second he like he goes into his room, like it's time for me to work on my stuff, and that's usually from 10 to 3, 4 in the morning. So that's why I'm usually drinking something that has caffeine, maybe not coffee most of the time, but something that's gonna keep me awake. So when I say, I usually joke around that, yeah, like it's mostly caffeine, but I'm not 100% joking. It definitely, the caffeine helps, and I guess I'm one of those. I'm a night artist when sometimes feels like I work better at night. So
I
you
don't
know,
have kids, and yeah, my whole life I've been like feel like I can't accomplish anything during the day, and then suddenly it's 11 o'clock at night, and
exactly.
wow,
There's
everything's
a switch.
overflowing.
Yeah,
What
it's a
the hell
switch.
is
And
that?
see, and it's funny because I was thinking back when I didn't have a kid, like I didn't feel the urge to work on anything either. Like I've always drawn. I've always like I've always I'm always drawing since I can remember. But I guess because now like it's one of those things where like I don't have the time to like full the all the day to do it, like now I have to do it. Now it's like a weird kind of motivation where it's like, okay, well, you know what, I'm gonna do it. Like I don't have I can't do it during the day, but hell, all right, it's gonna happen no matter what. It's one of those like like challenge, like one of those things where you challenge yourself like without thinking, like, all right, whatever, like I'm gonna prove myself wrong, so I don't know. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
yeah, it's
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 no,
weird.
it's totally funny that yeah, and I agree that sometimes you set goals for yourself when the goal is even harder to obtain than it may have been in the past, like
Yeah.
you're creating obstacles for yourself. But another note I had in terms of themes from the comic is inheritance. And I didn't know that you had a son coming into this conversation, and I wonder if at all you're talking about it as now that you're more busy because you have a family, you for whatever reason you decided to pursue this project, and thinking about it from the perspective of in the comic there is a theme of inheritance, that these rings are passed down within families and end up with these kids who have superpowers. And I wonder how you see your comic from the perspective of a father.
Well, that's I mean, not to give too much away, but that's gonna be one of the themes in the next few issues. A father and his kid. Because yes, there's gonna be a reason why these rings. I guess I'll give some away. That
You
these
you
rings would.
could you could take as much time as you want to formulate, so you don't spoil too much.
Yeah,
Take
I'm
your
not gonna
time.
spoil too much, but it definitely like the main characters' parents are gonna have to do a lot with what's gonna happen in the next few issues of the story and
Okay,
overall.
cool.
So
And as a
yeah,
reader, I'm happy to hear that, because it's a little teased in the beginning of the comic, I think.
yeah, no, yeah, definitely, yeah. I threw in a lot of like little hints here and there of what's gonna happen in the future. And you can see it in the first issue in the flashback part. So yeah, that's gonna be another theme. Again, it's all part of just growing up. And family has to do a lot with it. So it's gonna, it's part of the story, but
And
later.
were those aspects of the story included in your story before you had your son, and before you had a family yourself?
Yes, yeah. The father and son relation was a big theme in the first iterations of the story growing up. So and again, in the previous iterations, I like the father figure like had a bigger presence earlier in the story, but now like to accommodate some of the story, I pushed it back a few issues later. So it's gonna be a big part of it later on.
Cool. Yeah, and I think that's just the way that I see the story panning out. It's great that you get a little bit more intimacy with the main character before um, having more complex relationships, like a father-son relationship, introduced to that. So I appreciate that you pushed that out, and I could see that as a wise decision from a storytelling perspective, potentially.
Nice, yeah. Thank you. Again, I just been moving stuff around in the story for throughout the year. So, and again, it goes back to all the things that happen that have been happening in my life. In my life, like that somehow shapes the story, the Dreams Protector story. So, little things that happen in the story sometimes have, they kind of like mirror what's happened in my life. So.
Anything specific, like from the first issue or second issue, that you would want to highlight for people who are looking to read it, and then tie the story back to your experience as a human on this planet Earth?
um. Well, the one thing that I want to bring out is a lot of these a lot of parts, a little like parts in this story that actually came from dreams that I've had throughout my life. So there's little parts that you're like, oh, this feels a little random, but in one, yeah, it's like, I don't know, I want to say maybe a third of the story like is from scenes in dreams that I've had.
Oh wow,
So
you're the
dreams,
second
dreams are a big thing, a big theme that it's gonna. Well, actually, it's in issue four,
five.
5. It's like and not to spoil it, but the dreaming is like a big issue, and that's gonna have like consequences later in later issues too. Like again, I'm trying to have it all be connected, to all just to like come around, like like make sense to some extent, like why like stuff that happened in previous issues is gonna have a big effect on later issues and so on. So
Yeah, that's good. It's great storytelling,
yeah.
to be able to do that. As you were, so just to lay the groundwork for this question, when I was a kid, I similarly, drew a bunch of characters and had my own ideas for stories. And I remember very specifically, it must have been, I feel like it was kindergarten, but I think it was probably more like first or second grade. So not that much different from kindergarten. But I drew a Power Rangers inspired character. and I drew one for me and I drew one for my friends as well. And I distinctly remember that some kid who I thought was my friend encouraged me to do it and like, yeah, this is cool. And then I did it and he took the drawing of the character I made for him
Uh-huh.
and basically showed everybody else, was like, look at this is so kiddie and stupid.
Oh.
I totally remember, I don't remember the character I drew for him, and maybe I'm incepting a memory into my head, but let's just imagine he tore it up.
Oh.
But I remember very distinctly the character I drew for myself.
Hmm.
And um, so that's the groundwork for the question. I
Uh-huh.
wonder how you persevered. Maybe persevered is the wrong word. I wonder how you were able to carry these characters and these stories with you for such a long time. And whenever you might have shared this with other people, their reactions and how the community around you at any point in your life uh, reacted to you having and carrying universe protectors with you for so long.
Well, um, I mean, everyone that knows me knows that I always love to draw. So everyone has that. All my family and friends have always been supportive of of what I do. And when I showed them the comic, they were like really impressed because it's one of the. Again, it's different when you just show like a sketchbook with that drawing and stuff, and they're like they're cool with it. But it's another thing when you actually have like the actual like printed book. So everyone's really supportive. My brother actually, he was really supportive too. He, back when we were kids, like he would also draw a couple of characters and would be like, hey, like you want to implement this character into your comic, and actually a couple of characters are like based on the drawings he made from back in
Oh,
the day. So yeah, it's everyone not the word expected, but definitely like they were like, oh yeah, that's Jose. That's, I mean, we're impressed, but that's something he definitely like would do. So yeah,
yeah. Did
it's
they know this whole time that you had this specific story with you? Like,
yeah, yeah.
did you
When
always
when
share that it was something specific?
Yeah, I mean, I've always I talked to them about the stories that I had in my head, so they knew. It was one of those things where like they knew about these characters. So and the people based and the people that were the characters that were based on the people and on my friends from back in school, like they knew of those characters too. So they're like, oh yeah, so that's that character kind of looks like your friend, and yeah, stuff like that. So yeah,
And
definitely expected.
how long did you maintain that practice of keeping people who you knew and friends and classmates in the comic?
Well, I mean, after when after graduating from sixth grade and when everyone went to middle school, we went to different middle schools, so I kind of lost touch with most of them. So that was it. It was just again mostly fifth and sixth graders, just drawing characters and playing around with them. But I lost touch with most of them, so it's one of those things where like, okay, so they're out of my life, so. And then
So
again, back then, like we didn't have like there was no internet, there was no phone, so there was no if we didn't like if we didn't know where which one of us lived, like we kind of again our only meeting point was school. So if we didn't hang out outside of school, like there was no way to stay in touch. Yeah.
yeah. It's like it's interesting. We talked about scarcity of accessibility to certain anime and shows and stuff like that. And talking about this, I have this idea and sense of impermanence, which is something that maybe we don't experience in the same way. Because I mean, I there's people who I met in Japan for one night hanging out in a group, and I am connected with those people on Facebook. But
Yeah.
back in the day, like you said, kids who I went to elementary school with and spent days on days with no way, unless I really dig in deep into Facebook trying to find them, no way to connect with them back
Yeah,
then.
I've done that too. I haven't found many friends from well, mostly because I was in Mexico from fourth to ninth grade. So there's now it's kind of difficult to kind of try to find them through any of the social media nowadays. I found a couple, but we don't really we don't talk that much though.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. Um, is there anything? Is there anything you want? I have like a little bit of a wrap up kind of question, but is there anything else you want to mention or talk about in terms of themes, style, process, and the ideas that went into the comic itself?
Well, I mean, no, can't think of it right now, but it's just again, making this comic book has been like a dream come true. You grew. I grew up with anime and manga, but I also grew up with one of my two of my the comics I loved when I was growing up was the Sonic the Hedgehog comics
Oh,
and
interesting.
Archie Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle comics too.
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah, those are classic.
and so and again, my style is based on the anime and manga I watched or read, but the actual part of having a comic book came from those, like the actual comic part. So again, and for years I had these comics and I wanted to like have one of my own, and again, three years ago when I had my first issue like out as a comic, like I was over the moon, and it was just amazing, to actually, because again, it's so crazy to have an actual comic and just show it to people, be like, I did this myself. And that's one of the reasons why I kind of want to just do everything myself, because again, 100% me, it's all me. So
Yeah,
the,
yeah.
the, the process, and again, every time every issue is just a learning. Yeah, I just learned so many new things, so many things to do or not do.
Is there
So,
any recent lesson that is fresh on your mind that you've learned recently from the most recent issue?
well, the coloring part, like I'm trying to like just trying to get better at it. Just trying to, like again, for some reason, like coloring digitally doesn't click as easy, as with other media. But every issue, I try to like make the layouts and the color like work with each other. Like try new little tiny things. If every issue you see that there's either like a change in the color scheme, or I'm using more textures in like one of the issues or stuff like that. So and like every issue, I just try to open myself to learning, more, like just about the process. So yeah.
And is it always enjoyable? For me, in terms of the process, because for me, sometimes I get frustrated that I'm not moving more quickly to the finished product that I want to bring to fruition, and
Yeah,
I have to remind myself to enjoy the process. I wonder what your relationship is with the process itself.
it's same thing, especially when it comes to the coloring part. That part, like I have to like sometimes when I'm almost done with the whole comic, just I finish everything and I'm ready to like send it. And there's been a couple of times where like, I go back and like change like the colors, or change the way I did the colors, or just change the color scheme a little bit, just because I'm not, the color again. The color is the most frustrating part for me. Uh, and sometimes what I do, even when I'm done with everything, I take maybe like a 2-3 day break away from it, and then I go back and look at it, and that's when I
Mm,
kind of see little like mistakes, or stuff like that should be changed. But
right, but
definitely sometimes it is a little frustrating. It is, but
yeah, and
by
I
the end,
think
at the end,
those I think those 2 or 3 day breaks are really important because if you're in the thick of it, it's hard to see your own creation with fresh eyes. And
yes.
it's kind of like, going back to how we started the conversation, a little bit of a different application, but the same concept of resetting and disconnecting. to refreshen yourself and give yourself a break so that you could come back with fresh eyes and, have a better, clearer perspective on, in this case, the colors and the coloring.
Yeah, yeah, definitely helps a lot. But yeah, but like you said, it's a little annoying. But I also feel it's part of the process. It's one of those things that you need to feel in order to like at the end of the day have like a finished product. So I just made peace with it. Even if, again, if it's still frustrating, but I'm just like, you know what? That's when I decided to take the 2 3 the days off and just be like, okay, I'm just gonna wait it out. Like just get up, stretch. But it's
It's
just part of the process.
yeah. I mean, it's good. It's good to hear because I think a lot of people just want to enjoy everything about creating.
Yeah.
But there's some point where I guess like the rubber needs to meet the road, and you're not going to enjoy every part of it. And no pain, no gain. Like some of the oldest tropes about just putting in hard work
Yeah.
also apply to creativity and achieving a goal of a finished product. When there's some aspects of the process you might not love, but you just kind of got to put your head down and charge through. And for you, I guess that's coloring.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, coloring mostly, but again, it's just a little bit of everything. When everything comes in together, like sometimes you have to analyze stuff like as a whole, and sometimes you have to analyze it just like this. It's its own part. It's its own building block. Again, I mean, it's one of those things that I've learned as I go, personally, to just sometimes you have to let it go, let go whatever you feel like, okay, this doesn't look as good or whatever. Like there's so much I can do. I can never. It's one of those things where like I can stay stuck in there forever. So
Right. Yeah.
so just
Sometimes you
just
just
let
need
it
to move
go.
forward.
Yeah, definitely just let it go. If you've done, if I'm trying it. Sometimes it's hard to just say, okay, this is good, this is done. It's probably one of the hardest things to do, to just accept that that's it and you have to move on. So
Do you
but
have advice for anybody who reached that point where they know they should let it go, or how to realize when it's the point and how to allow yourself to let it go? Do you have any
I've
advice
seen
for how
so
you
many
approach that?
well, I've seen so many a few artists say that not not every panel has to be perfect. You have to make peace with that. So if you can't lose too much time on focusing the little things. As artists, I guess we were taught, or we've learned, that we need to fix every little thing. It feels like something not necessary to fix every little thing, but we cannot like waste too much time on just one little thing. Like again, it's just it's part of creating.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
make sure to have that whatever you wanted to change, that you don't feel comfortable with what you're working on currently. Just have it in the back of your mind for the next thing, so you can whatever you didn't feel like you were doing at best, like in the current, in my case, in the current issue. The next issue, I'll have it in the back of my head saying, okay, so I didn't like what I did in that previous issue. I'm gonna try to see what works better in this issue. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it's kind of like finding efficiencies and correcting issues that you had with past art in your next issues and your next projects.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. And how, tell me more about Sketchy Bug, I guess is kind of the general topic I want to address. Because, you know, Don Wynn is also part of that group. And Don was, I think, maybe my fourth guest or so, or
Mhm.
maybe he might have been my second guest. And you know, starting this podcast, I wanted to connect with people, learn more about creativity, be inspired, and uh, figure out how I could be more efficient and be more positive about my own creativity, and hopefully share those messages with anybody listening, right? And
Mhm.
one of the key takeaways that I come away with time and time again is that in person meeting, collaboration, community is really important for creative people, and that's something that I've been pretty siloed myself as a person who's trying to do creative things. And I think it's easy to be siloed nowadays with, I mean, pandemic aside, even with just the nature of communication on the internet, that you can exist by yourself and produce content and get it to an audience. But at the same time, almost all of my guests reveal that they have a community that, again, before the pandemic, they were interacting with people directly in the same geographic location, and that somehow informed or inspired their work. So, if you could just talk about generally how you found Sketchy Bug Group and what you how you benefit from being part of the group, your contributions, and also your takeaways.
Yeah, I believe I found them through meetup.com.
Okay.
Again, I was also part of an anime club and all that stuff. So I was trying to become a little bit more social. Not necessarily because I just wanted to be around other people, that had the same interests as I did. So both anime and comic books were like my two big ones. So I found the sketchy box through the meetup, and I started going to their meetings. They meet before the pandemic. We met once a week on Wednesdays. So it was like at 7 p.m. So I would get out of work at 6. So that was perfect. It worked perfectly. Um, so yeah, the sketchy box it's just pretty much there's a lot of writers and a lot of editors and illustrators, and again, anyone that had something to do with comics, or people. There were a couple of people that would just like hang in there just because it was pretty interesting to just hang around people that that love comics, and that really helped a lot. It's one of those things like for example, a comic book. It's cool to have like the PDF, to have the digitally, but nothing beats to have the actual physical thing. It's the same thing with like being around people that like again in my case want to do comics. It was just one like first of all, like you lose that fear, that it has a creator that you have sometimes that doesn't let you do things. So when I started going to the sketchybox, just seeing all these people, like literally they were creating a comic right there, like. And there's different methods too. Some of them had their laptops writing the stories. Some of them had the like notebooks writing the stories. Some of them were drawing on their tablets. Some of them were drawing on like these big boards with just doing the art. And it was just so inspiring. And it was just one of those things that like that you see them, and then you kind of like start asking questions. You start to get more informed, and just again just hanging with them. Like you feeling that you're part of a community that does comic books. That was really inspiring enough to kind of push you to like to just do like they do. It's again, it's one of those things where like they can do it, so I can too.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Sometimes the barrier to entry is seems so big, but it's actually so small that you just need to see another person do it to realize that it maybe isn't quite as hard as you expected.
yeah, and they also they had guests that work in the industry. Like we had a artist, that worked for DC or Marvel, so that was pretty cool too. Like we would get to ask them questions. They would get to talk to us about just the industry in general. So that was pretty cool. So
Yeah, and then your comics are available on Comixology, and I've wondered about that process, and if it's as easy as uploading a video to YouTube or uploading an ebook to Amazon, and what was that process like for you?
it's the process is not that hard, but it's the waiting. Comixology, I mean, back then I'm pretty sure the things have changed a bit since the last time I uploaded the comic. But they took about 3 to 4 months to approve and upload your comic to their site. Um, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I haven't uploaded all the other issues. um, but yeah, yeah, it's just a waiting. It takes a bit longer. So as opposed to the other, webtoons or just the other sites, they take less time, but comics only takes a bit longer. The
I
process
see.
is not it's not that difficult. But again, just approval time, just long.
Gotcha. Yeah. Nice. And then this is kind of my final question, but you are, free to go in any direction that you want in terms of dialogue. But I'm curious, you grew up watching Japanese cartoons and manga, anime, as well as the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Archie comics, which are more um, inspired by the cartoon than the
Yeah.
Eastman Laird darker comics.
Yep.
And I love both. Um, I wonder what you're consuming now, if you have a favorite anime or manga, if you're reading manga, and yeah, basically what kind of media, and if you have any recommendations.
Well, right. What am I watching right now? I mean, right now I'm just uh, I just have I watch some anime in Netflix. I'm not really right now. I'm not really watching as much stuff as I am playing video games. I also grew up with video games. So right now, like back has I don't the only comics I buy or I last bought before the pandemic were all the comics from all my friends in Sketchybox.
Mm.
Because I went into I kind of wanted to get more like the indie, of my friends, just helping my friends pretty much when there's a comic out, like I kind of like try to buy them. Again, before the pandemic. Right now I'm kind of like again I'm dwelling more into the video games. So yeah, it's mostly video games at the moment. Like that. And actually I still need to go through a bunch of the comic books I bought before the pandemic. I still like every now and then, like I have my whole collection, and again I'm pretty sure I've I keep reading a lot of people that have a lot of comics that they have the comics, they haven't necessarily read them. They're like, oh, I need to go through them. But same thing with me, like every now and then I read a comic or two, but mostly right now it's just video games, mostly because of the shutting shutting your brain down, part of it. So
Yeah, yeah.
that's the one thing I do every time like things are a little rough. I just play video games. So yeah.
I can fully appreciate that. And what about from, you mentioned reading the Sonic comic and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Archie comic. Were you uh, were you always a consumer of comics in terms of reading a lot of comics, or was it more a means for you to express yourself?
Uh, back in back in the day, like I would just buy comics to consume them. And again, that's what inspired me to wanting to make a comic. Um, yeah, not as much nowadays. Again, like I do buy some comics, but not not as much. You know, when I used to have a ton of like a big collection from when I was living in Mexico, but when it was time for us to come to the US, I had to kind of sell all my stuff.
I see.
So that's one of those. I guess that's a kind of, I don't know if that's what made me not want to have like big collections anymore, because it feels like if at some point I have to get rid of them, like I'm not gonna, it's not gonna be I don't know, it's not just not gonna be a good feeling. So I'm kind of worried right now at the moment where like I love comics and I have a few of them. I don't know if I want to have like an infinite collection like I used to have back in the day, So it's
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. And
I feel the same way.
speaking of which, I actually do have I still have the Sunday the Hedgehog and some of them. So the comic books. These are from
Was that really
92.
popular in
Well, actually,
Mexico,
well, actually,
or did you buy that here?
well, yeah, I was born here, but I was raised in Mexico for the first 8 years, and then we came here from 90 to 93, and then, and that's when I started buying comics. Let me turn this off again so you can see. So This is Sonic from 92. Where's it? Let me see where the. Yeah, this is issue 4 back in 91, 90, 91, 92, one of those years. This issue 3.
Was it, did you have a specific love for something about the Archie style, or
Yes, I
was it just that that was available to you, or?
well a little bit of both because that's the Ninja Turtles one. This is again from 92. This is the you know.
Oh, that's way cooler than the ones I remember
Oh
being much more goofy.
yeah, I have a well. I mean, I had because again, these are a few that I kept. I have like 4 or 5 just random comic book issues from back in the day that I was actually able to just keep, but it was the style, the maybe not so much the art, but the writing was like a little bit on the goofy side. Like it was like serious, but they didn't take themselves too serious,
Right.
and that's kind of one of the things, like the kind of writing kind of inspired me to wanting to do the comic. Like because if you read the Universe Protectors, it's like there's a lot of like crappy stuff like happening, and then all of a sudden in a panel like I throw in like a dumb joke, you know. That's
Yeah,
kind of
it
like
reminds me of the pacing of like The Last Airbender
yes.
and
Oh, that's another
Korra.
anime. Yeah.
Um, yeah, so your style, storytelling, and the pacing and the general tone reminds me a bit of that, and it's kind of like um, manga and anime coming full circle back into the U.S. And I think your comic too. It's definitely manga inspired, but it's not quite manga. I mean, it's in color, which is one huge difference.
Yeah. That when I was starting the comic, people were telling me that I should just do it in black and white, but I'm like, but the first issue is color. Like I can't just like go jump into black and white, so I had to like just stick to the color. But yeah,
I think it's nice. Yeah, yeah. No, it
I just want to stay
feels.
consistent, but
Yeah, yeah.
it's a lot of work to stay consistent. But like I'm already doing it in color. I'm not gonna back down. Nope.
No, you have no choice.
Yeah, but yeah, the definitely those comics, the Archie comics from back in the 90s, that the writing like was I felt it was really cool. So again, that's one of the reasons why I like kind of try to save these comics because these were like for me personally, they were like the building blocks of the writing aspect of my comics.
Yeah,
So I'm again, my comic at this point is just like a blend of everything I grew up with. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And that's exactly what I love to explore. When I have these interviews, because the random, what's your random? It's kind of asking what is what is specific to you. What makes you unique, what makes what you're producing specific to you. And you've shared a lot of your random today, and
So much
like
fun.
Archie comics, that's a very awesome random, and it's cool to see that thread run through to the content that you're currently producing. And yeah, like everything you told me makes sense in the context of um, universe protectors. And yeah, it was a great conversation. I don't know if you have any parting words, anything else you want to say before we go.
Well, I mean, if anyone that watches this wants to take a look at my comic, it's called Universe Protectors. It's all me. My characters, I've had these characters in my head for the longest time. So I always joke that they live rent free in my head. Uh, and they're part of me. So I do this comic, I write it, I do the art, I do everything. So when I check it out, just just yeah, check it out at my web. You can find links on my website, josecardenas.com. And yeah, that's links. The first issue is I actually have it in now at Webtoon for free. So if you want to check it out.
Yeah, so you could get a teaser, and I'll say I love that cover, and it illustrates both the Archie like and manga-like style, and also the intimacy and the emotion that is invoked over the issues. And I think if you check out the first issue, you will very likely go ahead and check them all out, because Jose's project is something to read.
Thank you
And
so much. And
I'll link to your social media and to your website in the show notes. And anybody watching on YouTube, I put those also in the top left corner of the screen to refer to.
awesome. Yeah. And anyone that checks out my stuff, let me know what you think, because I would really appreciate feedback. Like, it always, that as an artist, like, it's always helpful. It's because sometimes as an artist, you just like you want other people's perspective. Because constructive feedback or just regular feedback is I'm all for it.
Awesome. Well, Jose, thank you again so much for joining me, and congratulations on making it to this point, pulling the trigger and pursuing your dream of releasing a comic into the world and having 5 issues so far. And I am certainly looking forward to the remaining issues to come. So don't stop creating.
Never will. And thank you so much for having me in your podcast. It's one of those things it's one of those things I wanted to do in 2020. Like, one of my resolutions was to be more social and be out there more, but you know what happened. So I kind of I'm still struggling with it. So, but then this is fun. So, yeah.
I had a blast, and you are welcome back anytime to discuss future projects. And until next time, my sign off, as always, is to enjoy your random.
Yeah, thank you so much. Take care, guys.
Hello, my fellow randoms, and thank you for hanging on for our post-show debriefing, where I talk about key takeaways and explore areas where I think I might be able to improve the podcast and or my performance. For key takeaways, this conversation was really interesting. I think Jose's comic book is astounding. It's amazing work by one individual person that he's able to turn these issues around in just 4 months. And I think he shed light on his mindset and how he goes about doing that. Some organization involved, and really just a lot of dedication, and like he said, maybe also fueled by caffeine. But I think that's an inspiration to us all, that sometimes you need to put your head down, carve out the time, and do what you need to do to get your projects done. So chalk that up as one key takeaway for me. The second, and really fun, and I don't even have a word to really describe it other than maybe admirable, is the fact that Jose has had this idea since he was a kid. I think that's really inspiring. Maybe that's the word. It's inspiring to hear a story of somebody not letting go of a childhood idea, childhood dream, and bringing it into fruition when they're older, and the story still resonating with them and still being meaningful enough to them that they carried it with them for that long. And that is part of Jose's story, at least, and that I find very compelling and inspiring, and it shows through that he's carried this story with him so long, because it's a very efficiently told story and very effectively told, maybe I should say. I'll leave it at that. I think the conversation spoke for itself, and I really enjoyed it. As for my performance, it was a pretty standard episode, a little bit of a longer one, which I tend to enjoy. I wonder if my listeners also enjoy the longer form discussions. Let us know. Holler at us at What's Your Random on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, but mostly Instagram. And let us know what you're working on. Coming up on a year end, and maybe some New Year's resolutions. let's talk about both the achievements of the past year and what we look forward to doing in the future. I hope that we could create a creative community through this podcast, and I hope that you listening through to the end of this episode here and now, I hope you benefit from what my guests have to share, because I certainly do. So until next time, enjoy the rant.